So tennis balls like these are changing the way the game is played at all levels. Don't believe me? Well, the best players in the world have been open and upfront about how the change in balls has really slowed down the game.
Tennis ball has changed this year. I mean, it is different from last year. The longer you play, the more rallies you play, the fluffier or the bigger the ball becomes, and it's slower. So
it basically favors people who can generate power from dead balls, and some have a better quality with this, some don't. And actually the two best players, they are already the best players in the world, and I'm sure they would be with other balls, but with these balls they are the only players who can generate crazy power. It's Yannick and Carlos, so it gives them extra edge.
I asked companies and I asked the production of the tennis balls. Since COVID, all the companies, it's not only one company, so Dunlop was always the best tennis ball, kind of, but they've gotten a lot worse. You know, I always loved the pen balls. They gotten a lot slower, and the reason being is that because of COVID, the companies had tried to cut costs, and they're using a different rubber material now. They're using a different material for the tennis balls, which makes the tennis ball between 30 and 60% slower on average compared to what it was before COVID. So I just generally think the balls, in general, it's not only one company, but in general the balls got a lot worse and a lot slower. What happens now with the tennis balls is that the air and the pressure leaves the tennis ball because of the material. The material doesn't keep it inside, so it's not only that the ball fluffs up, but actually the air and the pressure of the tennis ball drops drastically. They're a little bit like a shuttlecock, so they fly very fast through the air the first 2-3 meters, and then they just slow down.
Tennis balls are now much fluffier and made of lower quality rubber, which leads to two big consequences. The first is the balls are much slower, and the second is the balls are less consistent from week to week, causing arm injuries to some of our favorite players.
Alcaraz just pulled out of his third event in 2 months. We're explaining the injury that...
And that's why a lot of players now have elbow issues, a lot of players have wrist issues, and that was not the case about 10-15 years ago.
Ball-related injuries typically happen to your dominant hitting arm, so if you're a righty, to your right arm, either in your wrist, your elbow, and sometimes into your shoulder. And the issue isn't necessarily that the balls are harder or heavier, causing more strain on every single shot. It's more that the balls change from week to week depending on what tournament you show up to, and even from tube to tube. You'll see inconsistencies. I've got no doubt that several of you have shared the experience with me. You open a can of pen balls, maybe they're just the Costco pens, which are gonna suck, but even like the Pro Pen Marathons, which used to be a pretty good option, you do a drop test and you'll see some are bouncier than others and some are just flat. When you're operating at the limit of the body's capabilities, like these pro players are, sudden changes to the conditions can activate muscles in ways that they just aren't prepared for. Let's say you suddenly play a tournament with extremely slow balls. To execute your money play, maybe it's like a big wide serve followed by a forehand up the line, you suddenly have to hit that combo much harder to have the same success you did last week. This can quickly lead to overexertion, especially if you find yourself making a deep run in a tournament. And to combat this, several players have adjusted their string setups, going for something a little bit softer for better comfort. Medvedev had Technofiber develop a new string just for him, Razor Soft, after previously using the normal Razor Code, though he'll also show up to tournaments using Natural Gut and sometimes switch between matches seemingly at complete random. And we've also seen Carlos Alcaraz use from RPM Blast to RPM Team, which is very similar but a little bit of a softer feel, and then Tsitsipas has used basically every string set up by Wilson or Luxilon under the sun. Now there is another benefit to going to a softer string setup to help with these balls, and that's more power.
When I came around in 2018, the game was very different to what it is now. Power has taken over, meaning that everyone can hit hard now. So, you know, you just gotta have to be precise as well, combine those two, and you have the ultimate player.
Balls have slowed down so much since COVID, since the start of COVID. I've talked to some factories, I've talked to some manufacturers. They've changed it as well, so the balls are about 30 to 40% slower on average. So that kind of goes into the discussion as well. We're just playing on slow surfaces with slow balls
And
nowadays.
if you're not really sure what this slower, fluffier ball plays like, try out like a Babolat Gold or Pro Pen Marathon or Wilson US Open, and then right away open a can of these ATP Dunlop Extra Duties, and these things fluff up the worst out of any ball I've ever tried. So what you'll notice with these fluffier balls is they slow down almost to a complete stop at the peak of the bounce, and it completely changes the game. First, these slower balls make it much harder to hit winners and just generally hit through the court. This is, I think, why Medvedev has been one of the loudest critics of these new balls. He's just not like an inherently powerful player, especially compared to his peers. What makes him special is how flat he hits the ball, especially when you consider his amazing accuracy and consistency.
I cannot hit a better return. The ball stops through the air, so he has the time to make like a half volley or at least try to play the ball in the court, but I'm fighting with what I can with the qualities I have.
If you look at peak Med, who I would say occurred when he reached world #1 at the beginning of 2022, that man would lace return winners from the back of the court like it was child's play. He would use his opponent's pace because that ball just hadn't slowed down that much after the bounce, redirect it with a very low height over the net, robbing time from his opponent using that lower trajectory, and that ball, because it was an older ball, would still carry pace through the court. Now, the ball sits up a lot more after the serve, so Medvedev has to generate more of his own pace, losing accuracy, losing consistency, and once his return bounces, it slows down a lot, making it way easier for his opponent to deal with. Now, these slower balls also make using a more powerful racket a lot more appealing. Along with several players moving to more powerful string setups, we've also seen a ton of players go to more powerful rackets. For example, in Vienna last year, Zverev switched from his Gravity Pro, a racket that was basically developed for him, to the Gravity Tour 100, a racket that has essentially the exact same specs to his old racket, but with a thicker beam to give him a little extra juice. In the off-season, Alcaraz has also added some more weight to his Pure Aero 98, making it a little bit more powerful and a little bit more stable. Plus some secret info, I also heard he might be using a slightly extended 27.3-inch racket. Tsitsipas has also been, dare I say, desperately looking for anything to give him a little bit of extra power out there compared to his old Blade 98, including a custom 99 square inch racket, Wilson Steam, and basically everything in Wilson's entire lineup. And this is weird because we've become really used to the idea that pros don't change their setup that much. They're not like us rec players, they stick with what's working. But more and more, it's like their old setups aren't working with these new balls, so we're seeing a lot more tinkering, not only off-season, but even mid-season. People looking for just the tiniest advantage to win a few more points in every match. Using a lighter, more powerful racket than the pros have in the past 10 years has become more and more common as the game has become more physical, mainly, I think, due to slower playing conditions.
I think we are going to see more of those longer duration of matches this year than we have maybe last year.
Now pros just have to create all this power out of nowhere, manhandling these dead balls and forcing winners out of crazy positions with seemingly inhuman racket head speeds. In these slower conditions, both court speeds are slower, but also especially with these slower balls that slow down so much right before the player hits the shot, gives these pros time to take massive rips on every single ball. This is why we see the two best players in the world right now, who I would argue are Sinner and Alcaraz, given that they split slams last year, hitting some of the hardest, most powerful shots in the craziest positions on the court. Now they have all this time to take a giant swing because these balls are slowing down and sitting up right through the strike zone. And those two players are really special because they have the power to put those dead balls away. Now, I'd love to hear if you've noticed a difference in balls over the last couple of years. Have they slowed down for you? Is the quality getting worse for you? Would you be willing to pay a little bit more for something that is better quality? I definitely would pay more for something that is better quality. I'm not too happy with either of these. I hate these. I've been using the golds a little bit more. Even I used to be a pen guy, but I'm kind of off these pens because it's like one ball out of every tube feels flat, which sucks. I would way rather buy a can that lasts longer because of the higher quality rubber, goes through the air a little bit better with better felt, saves me some trips to the store, I get to produce less waste, and I have a better hitting experience in general when I'm playing. So I would definitely pay more for better balls.